The victims in this tragic incident were 36-year-old Billy Payne and his fiancée, 23 years old Billie Jean Hayworth. On January 1, 2012, they were brutally shot to death in their own home. Shockingly, their 7-month-old son was present during the horrifying act, but miraculously remained unharmed despite being covered in his mother's blood. The small town of Mountain City, Tennessee, was left in disbelief and horror by these cold-blooded murders. However, what unfolded during the murder investigation was even more astonishing: a Facebook feud. At the center of this chaos was Janelle Potter, a 31-year-old woman who had led a sheltered life. Janelle, who had battled health issues since childhood, had been subjected to relentless threats and malicious comments on Facebook for months. According to her, the deceased couple were the ones responsible for these threats. Could this deadly outcome truly be the result of a dangerous game fueled by revenge, as everyone suspected? The involvement of Janelle's protective parents and devoted boyfriend made this possibility not entirely implausible. However, the story was far from straightforward. Secret recordings, cryptic confessions, and the presence of a mysterious operative from the Central Intelligence Agency only added further complexity to this already twisted tale. The Facebook murders became a story where reality proved to be stranger than fiction. Mountain City, known for its welcoming and friendly community, seemed to have a darker side when it came to accepting newcomers. At least that was the belief of Janelle Potter, a sheltered young woman who had moved there in 2005 at the age of 24. Given her unconventional life experiences, it was understandable why Janelle felt like an outsider. Born on April 27, 1981 in Pennsylvania, Janelle Lee Potter was the second daughter of Marvin and Barbara Potter. However, her journey was filled with numerous challenges right from the beginning. With learning, hearing, and speech disabilities, along with a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes at a young age, Janelle's path diverged from that of her peers. She was always extra cautious about her health, a trait instilled in her by her overprotective parents during her upbringing. Even as she entered adulthood, Janelle found herself still under the tight control of her parents. This control extended to various aspects of her personal life, including the prohibition of having boyfriends or driving a car, experiences that were typical for individuals her age. Despite receiving a monthly Social Security disability check due to her health and learning challenges, Janelle remained financially dependent on her parents. After moving to Mountain City, her mother Barbara secured a job at Hewlett-Packard, a renowned multinational IT company. On the other hand, her father Marvin, affectionately known as Buddy, was retired and disabled. Marvin had an intriguing past, having served as a Marine in Vietnam and claiming involvement with the Central Intelligence Agency, although this was not officially confirmed. Regardless of the motivation behind his interests, Marvin had a deep fondness for firearms, evident in the collection of guns and ammunition in their home, even adorning his oxygen tank with bullet decorations. While her parents pursued their respective interests, Janelle lacked a significant occupation. Standing at almost 6 feet tall, with a childlike voice and social awkwardness, she struggled to form new friendships. As a result, she spent most of her time indoors, confined to their secluded ranch house. Her room resembled that of a 4th grader, filled with soft toys and posters, reflecting her personality, which seemed to align with her mother's sentiments. Like many other individuals who prefer solitude, social media became Janelle's primary means of support and connection with the outside world. Her Facebook profile described her as a sweet and caring person who loved life and enjoyed making others laugh. However, it proved to be quite challenging for her to use social media as an escape from her parents' watchful eyes, as they closely monitored all of her online activities. In 2009, when Janelle was in her 30s, she had a rare opportunity to break free from the confines of her computer screen and connect with others. During a solo trip to the pharmacy, which was one of the few places she was allowed to visit independently when her mother was occupied, she struck up a friendship with a pharmacy clerk named Tracy Greenwell. Tracy recognized Janelle from her previous visits and remembered how she looked when she first came in. Later, Tracy mentioned that she felt a sense of compassion for Janelle and decided to strike up a conversation, extending a hand of friendship. This single encounter would ultimately change the course of Janelle's life. After their initial meeting, Janelle started spending a significant amount of time with Tracy. For Janelle, interacting with Tracy's family and friends provided her with her first real taste of the outside world. She noticed the stark contrast between their vibrant lifestyle and the sheltered environment she was accustomed to at home. Being with them allowed her to try new things and engage in activities like rock climbing, which opened up a whole new world of adventure for her. Tracy also introduced Janelle to her brother, Billy Payne, who was better known as Bill. Bill was described as an outgoing, caring, and charismatic man who worked at the local thread factory after completing high school. Known for his sense of humor, he had a talent for lightening the mood and bringing joy to those around him. Some acquaintances believed that Janelle had a secret crush on Bill, although her feelings were not reciprocated. Bill was in a committed relationship with a woman named Billie Jean Hayworth, whom he had met at work. Despite a significant age difference of 13 years, Billie Jean had captured Bill's heart, and the pair shared a strong bond. By 2011, they were engaged and had welcomed a son into their lives. Their relationship was characterized by happiness and anticipation as they planned for their future together, including marriage. Tracy introduced Janelle to her cousin, Jamie Curd, recognizing there were no future prospects in a new relationship with Bill. Much like Janelle, Jamie was also a bit of a loner who was passionate about computers. They bonded over their shared interests and eventually started dating. However, they had to keep their relationship a secret from Janelle's strict parents, knowing they wouldn't approve. Eventually, Janelle introduced Jamie to her parents, but they were unaware of the true nature of their relationship and believed they were just friends. Jamie, being a computer repairman, found his way into the Potter home whenever Marvin or Barbara needed help with their family computer. Behind her parents' backs, the couple continued their romance, with Jamie even providing Janelle with a cell phone for discreet communication. It appeared that Janelle's life was finally taking a positive turn. She'd found a supportive group of friends and had a boyfriend she cared about. However, around this time, Janelle started experiencing relentless bullying on her Facebook page. Anonymous comments flooded in, labeling Janelle as a bad person and even threatening her with assault. Janelle confided in her mother, Barbara, about the online threat she was facing, and Barbara was deeply disturbed. In an attempt to address the situation, Barbara took matters into her own hands and posted a plea on Facebook urging the perpetrator to stop the harassment. She also warned that if the harassment didn't cease, she'd involve the authorities. When Barbara questioned Janelle about the identity of the perpetrator, Janelle suggested that it could be Billie Jean Hayworth. But what reason would Billie Jean have for such malicious actions? According to Janelle, Billie Jean was envious of her looks and feared that her boyfriend Bill might leave her and their child for Janelle. She even claimed to her parents that Billie Jean was responsible for the ongoing prank calls and intimidating drives past their house. On the flip side, Billie Jean confided in some friends that they were being harassed by Janelle. They believed that Janelle was envious, and despite being in a relationship, she still had feelings for Bill. Amidst this social media conflict and complex web of accusations, both men stood by their partners. Bill supported Billie Jean's innocence, while Jamie supported Janelle's claims. This division caused a rift between the once close friends, splitting the family into opposing factions. Despite being cousins, Jamie and Bill's relationship deteriorated due to the dispute. In response to her concerns, Janelle contacted the police to report the situation at one point. The situation took a dangerous turn when large rocks were thrown into the Potters' front yard, escalating the conflict to physical threats. Barbara, worried for their safety, contacted the police for assistance. Photos taken by the police showed that the rocks were marked with Bill Payne and Billie Jean's names, with one rock bearing the message, "I am your huckleberry." Although there were no immediate repercussions from the incident, Janelle's parents were deeply disturbed. Following this unsettling event, all parties involved unfriended each other on Facebook. With everyone unfriended, one might assume that this would be the end of the saga. However, it was far from over. On January 31st, 2012, around 10:30 a.m., the Johnson County Sheriff's Office in Tennessee received a troubling 911 call. A close acquaintance of Billy Payne and Billie Jean, who had visited their residence that morning, made a distressing phone call. She had discovered the couple's back door wide open upon arrival and was met with a horrifying sight upon entering. The young parents had tragically been shot and killed in separate rooms. Despite the harrowing circumstances, their 7-month-old son was found unharmed in his mother's arms, albeit covered in blood. Remarkably, Tyler remained eerily silent throughout the ordeal. The occurrence of murder was a rare occurrence in their tight-knit small town. Local law enforcement promptly notified the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation upon learning of the double homicide, recognizing the need for additional resources to handle the case. From the very beginning, investigators understood that this particular homicide case would be far from ordinary. The crime scene offered no discernible clues, and forensic evidence was noticeably absent. Post-mortem examinations failed to provide any significant new information beyond what law enforcement already knew. Although 2 bullets were recovered from the scene, the absence of the murder weapon severely hindered investigative leads. Initially, authorities considered the possibility that the violent scene at the couple's home was the result of a domestic situation, potentially a murder-suicide. However, as they conducted interviews with the couple's friends and family to piece together their lives, this theory quickly lost credibility. The authorities also explored the notion of a drug-related altercation, given the presence of methamphetamine residue at the scene. Mountain City was grappling with drug-related issues, and Bill had a history of drug use, leading to speculation that the crime may have been drug-related. However, this theory was ultimately dismissed due to the lack of any stolen items from the house. As authorities continued their search for clues, news of the double murders spread rapidly throughout the small town, sending shockwaves throughout the entire community. However, the increased awareness also resulted in speculation and suspicions being directed towards specific individuals. On February 1st, 2012, the day after the murders, Chief Deputy Joe Woodward of the Johnson County Sheriff's Department, accompanied by Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agents, conducted an interview with Janelle and her parents, Barbara and Marvin, at their home. Unbeknownst to them, the interview was covertly recorded. Initially sympathetic, the Potters soon took a defensive stance. Eventually, Janelle began revealing the animosity between the 2 parties, even mentioning Bill's drug use during the conversation. The focus then shifted to Jamie, considering his recent fallout with his cousin and its potential relevance to the case. Detectives believed it was important to discuss his dynamics with the family. To their surprise, Janelle appeared to still be concealing her relationship with him. However, when questioned about her involvement in the murders, Janelle vehemently denied any responsibility. With no useful information obtained from the Potter family, the detectives found themselves back at square one. Nevertheless, on the second day of the investigation, they received a tip that would completely change the course of the interrogation. According to the tip, during the Facebook feud, Jamie had engaged in a heated argument with Bill, during which he allegedly threatened to harm him. Given their existing suspicions about Jamie and his motives, this tip was too significant to ignore. Without wasting any time, they brought Jamie in for questioning at the police station on February 2nd, 2012. Jamie explained to the detectives that Bill was upset because Jamie continued to support Janelle during the conflict on social media. After further questioning, the detectives directly asked Jamie if he was responsible for the murders of his own cousin, Bill, and Billie Jean, Bill's fiancée. Despite Jamie's denial, investigators still harbored suspicions about him. During the investigation, the police diligently carried out their tasks, analyzing ballistic reports, verifying alibis, and considering hearsay. 4 days after the tragic murders, the grieving loved ones of Billy Payne and Billie Jean bid their final farewells. On February 6, 2012, 2 days later, detectives decided to subject Jamie Curd to a polygraph test, which he failed miserably. The test results indicated that he had lied about his knowledge of the killer's identity. Consequently, the investigators brought him in for another round of questioning, this time with a determined effort to elicit a confession. After hours of interrogation, Jamie finally admitted to his involvement. He revealed that while Marvin carried out the murders, he stood by as a witness. Jamie even provided details of how he had slashed Bill's throat. The detectives concluded that both Marvin and Jamie were implicated in the killings, but they still needed to ascertain the extent of Janelle and Barbara's involvement. Unfortunately, Jamie could not provide a definitive answer to this crucial question. Just as the interrogation seemed to be coming to a close, an unexpected twist emerged. Jamie casually mentioned the Central Intelligence Agency, leaving the investigators perplexed as to why he would bring it up. They probed further, and Jamie began to weave a bizarre tale. According to him, he had been exchanging text messages with someone named Chris, who claimed to be a friend of Janelle's and worked for the Central Intelligence Agency. Allegedly, Chris's role was to protect Janelle from her enemies. However, the detectives found this story highly implausible. Why would a Central Intelligence Agency operative involve themselves in a minor internet dispute in a small town? Were the details being fabricated by Jamie? Furthermore, doubts arose regarding Jamie's claim that Marvin was the perpetrator of the murders due to his disabilities. Could it be possible that Jamie acted alone in order to protect his girlfriend and gather concrete proof? The detectives instructed Jamie to secretly record Marvin's confession during a phone call. That night, Jamie made a call to the Potter residence. Although Marvin did not explicitly admit to the crime, his statements provided enough evidence for the police to take action. The next morning, on February 7, 2012, deputies from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office executed a search warrant at the Potter residence. When Marvin exited the house, the officers informed him of his arrest for the double murder. As the search began at the Potter house, Marvin was placed under arrest and restrained with handcuffs. Subsequently, his interrogation commenced at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. Initially, Marvin denied any involvement. Therefore, the detectives decided to adopt a different approach, giving Marvin an opportunity to implicate Jamie. Instead of continuing with the harsh interrogation, the investigators took on a more empathetic tone. Finally, after 4 hours of intense questioning, Marvin's story started to unravel. The investigators believed that Marvin was struggling with a moral dilemma where he believed his actions were justified. From Marvin's perspective, he was merely protecting his daughter from individuals who posed a violent threat to her. However, he took full responsibility and denied any involvement of his wife or daughter in the crime. On the other hand, Barbara was hesitant to accept that Marvin was responsible for the atrocious crime. Meanwhile, the police continued their search of the Potter home, looking for any physical evidence that could link Marvin Potter to the murders of Billy Payne and Billie Jean Hayworth. It was evident that the Potter household was far from being a typical home. Numerous weapons were found throughout the house, not just guns. Knives were also discovered in abundance. Additionally, there were other peculiar items present. One officer witnessed Barbara Potter tearing up a piece of paper that was found on a coffee table in the living room. Acting swiftly, the officer caught a glimpse of the content, which turned out to be a printed-out photo of Billie Jean Hayworth and some of her friends, downloaded from Billie Jean's Facebook page. Although Barbara's attempt to dispose of the evidence did not immediately result in consequences, it raised suspicions among the authorities. They began to doubt whether she might be withholding information. During the search of Marvin's truck, police stumbled upon 3 large white trash bags filled with shredded documents. These bags were confiscated for further examination, and upon closer inspection, significant evidence was discovered. In total, 51 items were seized from the Potter residence as evidence, including the family computer that Janelle frequently used. As the investigation progressed, both Marvin Potter and Jamie Curd were charged with first-degree murder in relation to the brutal killing of Billy Payne and Billie Jean. This development brought a sense of relief to the grieving loved ones of the deceased couple. Conversely, Barbara was disheartened by the unfolding events. It took investigators several months to meticulously piece together the evidence they had collected. However, as they delved deeper, they uncovered something unexpected. The investigators painstakingly reconstructed the shredded documents found in the 3 trash bags recovered from Marvin's truck. Among the fragments, they discovered over 100 pages of documents that revealed a trail of thousands of emails exchanged between Barbara and a Central Intelligence Agency operative named Chris, the same Chris mentioned by Jamie earlier. These emails primarily consisted of warnings about perceived threats to Janelle's life. Chris presented surveillance evidence indicating that Billy and Billie Jean were planning harm against Janelle. Recognizing Janelle's parents' protective nature, Chris exploited this vulnerability by stressing the urgency of the threat and the need for immediate action. He reassured Barbara and Marvin that their efforts to safeguard Janelle would clear them of any wrongdoing and pledged to clear their names. Ultimately, Chris manipulated Barbara into convincing her ex-Marine husband, Marvin, who had a fondness for firearms, to carry out the murders of Billy and Billie Jean. Uncovered emails revealed Barbara's involvement in orchestrating the plan to involve Jamie in assisting Marvin with the murders. One email from Barbara to Chris expressed a desire for peace, but also a willingness to resort to extreme measures if necessary. This disclosure not only incriminated Barbara in the murder plot, but also showed her active role in persuading her husband to commit the crime. As investigators probed deeper into the case, the enigmatic figure of Chris remained a central question. Why would a Central Intelligence Agency agent transform into a mysterious protector for a woman from a small town? With numerous unanswered questions, investigators realized the need for a thorough investigation. However, no one could have predicted the shocking plot twist that awaited discovery. Tracing the IP address linked to Chris's emails revealed a surprising revelation. It was the same address as the Potter family's home computer. Additionally, through forensic linguistics analysis, investigators identified significant similarities in grammatical and spelling errors between Chris's messages and those of Janelle, who struggled with learning difficulties. This revelation led to an inevitable conclusion. The supposed Central Intelligence Agency operative, Chris, was a fabrication, an online persona meticulously created by Janelle Potter herself. Acting in disguise, Janelle manipulated her unsuspecting parents and her love-struck boyfriend, deceiving them into seeking revenge on her behalf. With substantial evidence, Barbara and Janelle were arrested without resistance on August 12, 2013, for their roles in the murders of Billy Payne and Billie Jean over a year earlier. Both were charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Marvin and Jamie were already in custody awaiting trial at the time of their arrest. Despite the strong evidence, all members of the Potter family pleaded not guilty to the charges. Marvin was the first to go on trial in October 2013. The prosecution presented a compelling case supported by Marvin's confession and testimonies from Mountain City residents about his intimidating behavior. It was evident that crossing Janelle meant dealing with her war veteran father. During the trial, it was revealed that Marvin had a prior conviction in 2004 for falsely claiming medals from the Vietnam War. This revelation cast doubt on Marvin's credibility and his supposed connection to the Central Intelligence Agency. Despite his defense team's efforts, the trial proceeded smoothly. On October 11, 2013, the jury took only 3 hours to find Marvin guilty of the murders, sentencing him to 2 consecutive life terms. In contrast, Jamie reached a plea agreement with the state, admitting to 2 counts of facilitating and committing first-degree murder. Despite Janelle's persistent denial, the evidence presented during the trial painted a different picture, revealing the cunning manipulation that not only led to the tragic loss of 2 lives, but also devastated the lives of those left behind. The prosecution faced a tough case with Janelle and Barbara. Despite having substantial circumstantial evidence against them, there was a lack of direct forensic evidence linking Barbara and Janelle to the crime. Both women vehemently denied any involvement in the murders. Janelle went as far as claiming that she was not the person who posed as Central Intelligence Agency agent Chris. Barbara maintained that someone else had used her email address to communicate with Chris, and she argued that it couldn't be proven that she was the one who typed those emails. To secure a conviction in their favor, the prosecution needed to convince the jury that both women were guilty of murder, even though they were not physically present at the murder scene. During the initial 4 days of the trial, the prosecution relied on digital evidence to demonstrate that Janelle, pretending to be the fictional Chris, had deceived her parents and boyfriend Jamie in the year leading up to the murders. She orchestrated the killings of Billy and Billie Jean without physically participating in the act. On the other hand, Barbara was portrayed as an active participant in the deadly conspiracy. Then, the prosecution called their key witness, Jamie Curd, to testify. Unfortunately, the testimony did not unfold as expected. When asked if Barbara and Janelle conspired with him in the crime, he answered no. Despite this surprising testimony, the prosecution had one last card to play. They asked him to recount the events of the day of the murders, and this provided crucial evidence that Janelle had prior knowledge of the planned crime. The prosecution further emphasized that no evidence was ever found to support Janelle's claims that Billy or Billie Jean had threatened her or her family. They argued that the entire ordeal stemmed from Janelle's jealousy, particularly her inability to win Billy Payne's affections. It was also revealed that 2 women had previously obtained restraining orders against Janelle on separate occasions. In May 2011, the first incident took place when a woman claimed that Janelle had started harassing her after she removed her as a friend on Facebook a few months earlier. Janelle allegedly made harassing phone calls to her, ranging from 5 to 20 times a day. Another woman also came forward in the same month with similar accusations against Janelle. However, Janelle's defense team had a strategy in place. They brought in 2 expert witnesses to testify. The first witness was a cybersecurity expert who argued that IP addresses only identified devices, not specific users, and therefore couldn't definitively prove who had used the computer. The second witness was a neuropsychologist who had evaluated Janelle, and the evaluation confirmed that she was essentially functioning as a child and lacked the mental capacity to have orchestrated such crimes. The courtroom was filled with witnesses, but one particular prosecution witness stood out. Chris Jaden, a police officer from Delaware who had gone to high school with Janelle, was an unexpected witness. Surprisingly, Janelle had stolen Chris's identity for her online persona. The real Chris barely remembered Janelle, as they hadn't seen each other in almost 15 years. It seemed that Janelle had been fixated on Chris for a long time. She had downloaded photos of Chris from the internet to create a fake Facebook profile that she used to deceive her parents. Chris, however, had never interacted with Janelle or knew anyone named Billy or Billie Jean. After both sides presented their arguments, the jury deliberated for 5 hours following the 8-day trial. Eventually, the verdict was reached, finding both the mother and daughter guilty. On July 7, 2015, more than 3 years after the brutal murders of Billy Payne and Billie Jean, Barbara and Janelle were given 2 consecutive life sentences. During the sentencing, Bill's mother, Beverly Garland, delivered a poignant victim impact statement. The case presented a puzzling scenario where a person with emotional difficulties, supposedly functioning with a childlike mentality, managed to manipulate her family in a significant way. In a 2016 interview, Barbara expressed remorse for her actions. Her desire for a new trial was granted in August 2021, following the approval of one of her appeals. The argument made was that she deserved a fresh trial due to her original lawyer's conflict of interest in the 2015 trial, as he also represented her husband, Marvin. However, in November 2021, Barbara opted for a guilty plea, resulting in a reduced sentence of 25 years. On the other hand, Janelle continues to assert that she was a genuine victim of cyberbullying and denies any involvement in the murders.